Hello and welcome to Shouting at News. Welcome back if you're already a subscriber. If you're not, please consider hitting the subscribe, like and the bell icon. You've been on YouTube, you know the spiel. We've also got a Facebook page set up, so link in the description to that if you want to join and give me some chat there. Or perhaps just give me a comment about any improvements you'd like to see or stories you'd like me to cover, really. I'm going to ask a question. If you just listen to this, I do put jokes and memes in the image, but if you're largely just having this as a second screen, if you're not watching it, please let me know, because that'll save me a lot of time just putting one single continuous plague doctor image across all of it. But we'll kick things off tonight. Unlike any theatre or film production recently, we're going to open with the on-screen ham turned unappealing gammon, Laurence Fox, the man who's single-handedly trying to turn white privileged male into a psychological horror genre. If he's not burning bridges, he's burning pride flags, and if he's not burning those, he's burning his own reputation to the ground faster than you can say cancelled by popular demand. So let's dissect his recent pestcapades. First, there's the recent foray into amateur photography, sharing upskirt photographs. Now, call me old-fashioned, but that's the sort of behaviour that's reserved for creeps in dark alleys, not someone who fancies themselves as a beacon of moral fortitude. Nothing says champion of the people like invading someone's privacy like he's swapping trading cards in a game of revenge porn Pokemon, then blaming the victim for not wearing pants when called out on it. Fox's motivation for this was that the victim had mocked former Premiership footballer spunk receptacle turned right-wing shrieking banshee on GB Snooze, Liliani Dowding, who was presumably hired to pry the average GBB's viewer away from 90s nostalgia wanks over a well-stained copy of Loaded. Bravo, Laurence. Bravo. It's like watching a self-proclaimed Michelin-starred chef serve up a meal made entirely of captured stray cat entrails and expired goods from a supermarket skip. Sure, it's a spectacle, but no one's lining up for seconds. Still, that would somehow be more appealing than the sausages Fox cremated for his kids. One has to wonder what's going through his mind. Does he genuinely believe he's on a noble quest for truth, armed with a smartphone and not tilting at woke mills like an alt-right Don Quixote? But fear not, dear audience, for Laurence Fox is not one to be deterred by mere mortals and their pesky laws of decency. No, he's a man on a mission, sadly, to turn his burning of the pride flag into an annual event, whilst posting entirely unself-aware comparisons to the Nazis. Again. Of course, a symbol of love, universal acceptance, is every value that makes Laurence's blood boil faster than a historically accurate depiction of Commonwealth soldiers in a war movie. Watching him set it ablaze was like watching a toddler throw a tantrum in a supermarket. Except for a Kinder Egg, he's crying for the days when bigotry was more socially acceptable. Look at me and my back garden pyromania. That will stop the direction of travel towards greater tolerance and acceptance. Of course, this is all part of his tireless campaign of homophobia. In an era where most of us are fighting for inclusivity and understanding, Laurence is charging backwards on a horse named ignorance. Whilst he's not losing libel cases for shouting paedophile, his attempts at stoking hatred are about as subtle as his dreadful acting performances as the weakest sperm in the acting dynasty, and about as effective as trying to burn down Parliament by lighting his own farts. Recently whining to a crowd of unwashed ghouls he probably loathes, "This is our home. We have nowhere else to go. If you want the great back in Great Britain, it won't be the politicians. It's down to you, me and everyone else." Almost impressive, really. To have such unwavering commitment to being a completely backwards anachronism, he's practically a historical reenactment of a brick being thrown at Oswald Mosley. Then there's his recent spat with a bus driver. I'm trying to finish this section and the complete tool keeps giving me more material in real time. It's like trying to paint the Forth Bridge if the Forth Bridge kept growing another 500 metres each day. Foxwit, behind the wheel of his trusty shitmobile Audi that's seen more MOT failures than he's had Twitter tantrums, was cruising through the streets of London like a lost soul, searching for a crumb of relevance, fresh from his appearance at a far-right rally. Suddenly, disaster strikes. His car decides to play a game of chicken with a double-decker bus, and let's just say the bus doesn't blink. Now, most people, when faced with such a predicament, would exchange insurance details and maybe offer a sheepish apology. But not our Laurence. No, he decides to whip out his smartphone? He decides to whip out his smartphone and live streams the whole thing like a modern-day Captain Ahab hunting his great white whale of self-promotion. In the ensuing chaos, Fox rants, "We're in the lane! You just crashed into our lane!" He bellows as if he's the protagonist of some twisted version of Death Race 2000. And when the bus driver dares to suggest he sit down in his car, Fox responds with all the eloquence of Withnail, full of scotch behind the wheel of the clapped-out Jag. "I've only had a few ales, officer." But let's not forget the glorious topping, the expired MOT and unpaid ULEZ charges. The MOT on her Fox's 2-decade-old jalopy was about as valid as his arguments against inclusivity and about as roadworthy as a penny farthing being ridden by Keith Richards. Unsurprisingly, it's not ULEZ compliant, probably something Fox and Hounds thinks is a point of pride. But what's truly remarkable is how Laurence Fox has managed to turn irrelevance into an art form. He's the Da Vinci of obsolescence, crafting masterpieces of idiocy that leave us all wondering how somebody can be so wrong so often and still believe they're the hero of their own story. It's as if he's decided to embody the Dunning-Kruger effect. Not just embody it, but perform it in a one-man show complete with pyrotechnics and unfiltered bigotry. He's about in touch with reality as a goldfish in a bowl of LSD wearing VR goggles. So here's to Laurence Fox, the man, the myth, the cautionary tale of career self-immolation. The gift that keeps on giving, like a box of chocolates laced with arsenic, norovirus and a dog shit assortment. You never know what you're going to get, but you can be damn sure it'll leave a bitter taste in the mouth. May he continue to blaze a trail of misguided indignation, proving to us all that there's truly no upper limit to human stupidity. Bravo, Laurence. Bravo. I knew that this was going to be an election that was batshit insane, but we really have got off to an absolutely absurd start. Robert Largan, the Tory MP with an identity crisis so profound it makes Kanye West look like a model of consistency, this is a bloke who's been campaigning for re-election in High Peak, Derbyshire, a seat he won by a baw hair back in 2019. You'd think he would be trying to solidify his Tory base, but no, Robert's decided to stand for everyone. Yes, Largan's latest social media stunt features him grinning against a Labour red backdrop, proudly declaring Labour for Largan, because apparently so many Labour voters are dying to keep a Conservative in office they formed a club about it. At the bottom of this graphic, if you squint really hard, there's a tiny disclaimer promoted by the Conservative Party. It's like finding out your vegan restaurant is actually a front for a butcher shop and every meal contains tripe. Social media predictably erupted in bewilderment. Over 1.5 million views and thousands of comments, most of them on variations of what the actual fuck. Meanwhile, the platform's other users had to clarify that Largan is in fact still a Tory. Thanks, Sherlock, that needed a bit of a footnote to explaining Darth Vader isn't actually promoting galactic peace. Not one to rest on his laurels, or perhaps his marbles, Largan doubled down with another post. This time he embraced the colours of Reform UK with the slogan, Reform for Robert. So now we've got Labour for Largan, Reform for Robert. What's next? Green for grifting? Lib Dem for lunacy? This is a man who's a walking rainbow coalition, except instead of bringing people together, he's just making everybody collectively facepalm. Derbyshire police even got involved thanks to a flurry of messages alleging online election fraud. That's right, Largan's marketing genius is so baffling it sparked a police incident. They're probably wondering if he's committed a crime against fucking sanity. Conservative Party, bless them, tried to defend their chameleon candidate. They insisted it's abundantly clear what Largan belongs to. Sure, if you can navigate his website where the Tory logo sits awkwardly atop of sea of green, perhaps Largan's colourblind, or maybe he's hoping to win support from everybody from Greenpeace to the Green Party. This isn't his first foray into misleading marketing. Back in September, he put out Tory leaflets designed to mimic the local paper at High Peak Reporter. It was like a dodgy knockoff Rolex, except no one's buying it. After being called out, Largan had to apologise, claiming it was a genuine mistake. You know, like mistaking a fox for a Labrador, or why your dog keeps eating your chickens. Largan's tagline on social media reads, "Vote local, vote Largan." At this rate, it should be vote local, vote lunatic. Because if there's one thing we can all agree on, it's that Robert Largan is committed to confusion, chaos and perhaps comedy. So come election day, if you're in High Peak and not quite sure who to vote for, don't worry. Just close your eyes, spin around 3 times widdershins, leave an occult symbol in blood on the election ballot, because there's a chance that Largan is standing for that too. But it's not just the Tories who are fielding candidates whose allegiances seemingly lead elsewhere. Luke Akehurst is standing as a Labour candidate. Luke has had a career so multifaceted it's like he's been trying to collect all the bad PR jobs in one lifetime. He's been at the helm of We Believe in Israel since 2011, despite not being Jewish and proudly proclaiming himself to be a Zionist. He may as well have a neon sign saying, "Bought and paid for by Mossad." Before that, he was a director at Weber Shandwick, a PR firm, for 11 years. The man spent over a decade spinning so much he's probably got vertigo. He was even named UK Consultant of the Year in 2008, which is impressive until you remember that's like being named head vampire in a blood bank. He also worked in the BBC Political Research Unit and Hackney Council, Lewisham Council and the Labour Party. The man's CV reads like a tour of every bureaucratic nightmare imaginable. He's failed to get elected in Aldershot and Castle Point, proving once and for all that even places most people drive through to get somewhere else didn't want him. He's now on Labour's National Executive Committee representing constituency Labour parties, CLPs. That's the political equivalent of being lead rat catcher on a sinking ship. Akehurst's been controversial for his staunch support of Israel. He's denied that Israel's actions in Gaza have been disproportionate. That's like ordering a whole roast pig on a spit with all the trimmings for one. He even called the United Nations anti-Semitic for highlighting illegal Israeli settlements. That's like blaming the fire department for your house being on fire. In a particularly absurd moment, he claimed an attack on Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza was staged. He insisted a Palestinian man in the video was a crisis actor known as Mr. Fafo. The BBC debunked this, revealing that the so-called actor was an Instagram influencer. Imagine this. Luke Akehurst, a man, basically got catfished by a meme. In a week leading up to his selection as Labour candidate for North Durham, he deleted over 2,000 tweets. That's the digital equivalent of shredding documents whilst the police are at the door. One deleted tweet suggested the Jews are politically black. That's so confused it sounds like he's getting his racial theories from Helen Keller reading tarot cards. So, here we are with Luke Akehurst as Labour candidate, a man who's been everywhere, done everything and somehow managed to upset everyone along the way. It's like watching a car crash in slow motion, narrated by somebody who's insisting it's the tree that was put there by an anti-Semitic conspiracy. We'll now turn to Scottish politics and the case of the missing data plan with Michael Matheson MSP. The Scottish Government's ex-Health Secretary, he managed to run up an £11,000 data bill on his government-issued iPad. Yes, you heard that right. 11 sodding grand. Enough to make you wonder if he's downloading the entire internet or just finding a really expensive way to get fired. While sunbathing in Morocco, he treated data limits like Scotland's failed carbon emissions targets and the now scrapped recycling targets. His iPad was busier than a Kardashian Instagram feed, consuming more than 43.76 gigabytes of data. That's right, 43 gigabytes. During this period, the Scottish Government was conducting online meetings due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So either Michael was attending every single virtual meeting ever held in government history, or his iPad was possessed by the spirit of a Netflix binging demon. And no, he wasn't using a special government data plan that provides unlimited internet. This was all out of pocket, or rather out of your tax pocket expense. Now, I know what you're thinking. What could possibly require that much data? Was it really just Zoom meetings? Or perhaps he just discovered a new hobby of playing online poker while streaming the extended editions of Lord of the Rings in Ultra HD whilst backing up a decade of missing files in future-proof resolution scans. Initially, he insisted the device was used purely for work, blaming an outdated SIM card, but then reality hit like a 4G signal in a dead zone. The sons were using the iPad to stream a football match, racking up a bill larger than Michael Gove received from his dealer for his leaving due. And just to twist the knife a little bit more, Apple devices do indeed warn users about roaming charges. But hey, who needs those pesky warnings when there's a beach to be enjoyed? It's like a horror movie when the victim gets endless warnings about the killer being in the house, but decides to take an unusually long shower anyway. You've used 20 gig. You've used 25 gig. You have used an amount of data that's going to sink your career. Now, let's break these numbers down. For 11 grand, for 43 gigabytes is approximately 250 nicka a gigabyte. For 250 quid, you could buy enough petrol to drive from Land's End to John O'Groats 23 times, buy a decent second-hand iPad, or in Michael's case, fund a Moroccan data bonanza. For the full 11k, you could probably even buy a small fishing island in a loch and name it Roam Free. This delightful fiscal farce came to light through a Freedom of Information request back from the Liberal Democrats. They must have had quite the laugh when they saw the numbers come in, spitting out their tea and saying, "We've got him, he's downloaded Scotland's future and data charges." Of course, really waiting to reignite the internet bumblefuck scandal when the general election hit. The £11,000 data bill is nearly half of Michael's usual yearly expenses claim. Yes, Michael's holiday data binge cost more than a couple of months' worth of free travel expenses, office supplies, and occasional questionable lunch with constituents. For 11 grand, he could have bought 2,417 pints in Edinburgh, enough to get the entire pub pissed whilst they binge-watch the very football matches that cost him his job. Let's not forget the heroic effort by John Swinney, who burned through more political capital in defending Matheson than Boris Johnson on a work event explanation tour. Swinney even demanded a review of the complaints process, claiming bias from Conservative Standards Committee member Annie Wells. That's like demanding a replay in a football match when you've already lost 10-0, but points for effort, eh, John? Police Scotland initially dealt with a complaint last November, but surprise, surprise, a second one is now under review. The nature of the new complaint is unclear, but it's safe to say Michael's iPad scandal has more twist than an M. Night Shyamalan movie. The SNP, ever the paragons of transparency, remarked, "This is a matter for the Police Scotland," which is political speak for "please make this nightmare go away." For his trouble, Matheson has been docked 54 days' pay and suspended from the Scottish Parliament for 27 sitting days, making it a record ban. His salary penalty equates to roughly £10,914 of the bill charged to his parliamentary device. In essence, he's paying the taxpayer and political capital in cold hard cash, like a penitent teenager who finally admits they've spent all their pocket money on Fortnite skins. Scottish Conservative leader Douglas Ross didn't mince words, calling for Matheson's resignation and removal from the SNP whip. He said, "In any other walk of life, Michael Matheson would have been sacked for wrongly claiming 11 grand and repeatedly lying to cover his tracks." Ouch, that's got a burn. However, Ross's statement is ironic considering his own scandals. Remember when he claimed £92 in travel expenses at the same day he was the assistant referee at the Hampden Cup semi-final in 2020? It's like Ross lives in an alternative reality where he's refereeing a cup semi-final and MP duties that just so happen to coincide, because who would claim travel expenses for being in two places at once? Maybe Ross can give Matheson a few tips on how to juggle responsibilities and forgetfulness more efficiently. The final nail came in February 2024 when Matheson finally resigned, citing his departure as a means to avoid it being a distraction, because nothing says responsibility like fleeing the scene when the spotlight gets too hot. His resignation letter was probably the most expensive Word document ever produced on a parliamentary device. So, what have we learned today? Always check your data roaming charges. Maybe avoid using a government-issued iPad for your Netflix marathons abroad. And if you're a politician, every bite you consume may just come back to bite you. And if you're Michael, if you're watching, next time, just send a postcard. It's cheaper. For the final section, we're going to cross the Atlantic for the Trumpocalypse, where the fallout is so toxic even the cockroaches are wearing hazmat suits. Donald Trump, the human embodiment of a midlife crisis and towering hubris, has finally met his match. Stormy Daniels recounted how Trump was spanked with a magazine bearing his own grotesque visage. Whilst he compared her to his daughter, it's a Freudian black hole and truly nightmarish image. Trump's conviction is a rare beacon of sanity, a brief searchlight through the gaslight gloom. The day most sane folks thought would never arrive has finally dawned. The glistening Teflon of America's grotesque buffoon begins to blister and peel. This minor victory is a moment to relish. We should allow ourselves this moment, basking in the tears and the outrage of the MAGA faithful. Their golden calf is starting to crack and melt in the furnace he himself built and stoked. For years, this bloated, untouchable charlatan strutted through our nightmares, spewing venom and riding like a demented Hannibal on top the GOP whore-beast elephant. But no one is Teflon forever. Not Trump, the bloated tick of national shame who charred his allies to ashes and scorched earth. This humiliating consequence of his own action has finally come home to roost. The hush money case stood as the weakest of the legal arsenals aimed at his bloated hide, and yet it struck true. The tangerine swine nailed on all counts. But even as I read this, the ink scarcely dry on the verdict and the fallout is still an unpredictable beast. It's a spark threatening to ignite fireworks of American insanity. The rube to fascist pipeline is already growling ominously. This is, after all, a nation that collectively lost its marbles over an eclipse. The brutes that stormed the capitals to prop up this orange-skinned tyrant have not been idle. Their zeal isn't intact, and the fascist curious commentators and goon wranglers will whip up a frenzy like rabid dogs in a slaughterhouse. Imagine Trump's sentencing day, a grotesque theatre where he's paraded through the streets in a fool's gold-plated chariot, the king of the swamp, waving to the serfs whilst clutching a Bible in one hand and a wad of hush money in the other. It's a scene straight out of a dystopian farce, a darkly comedic end to an unprecedented absurdity. None of this is over until the election on the 5th of November. This conviction is not just a blow to Trump, but an indictment of the system that allowed a charlatan to rise to the highest office. As Trump schemes his appeal and braces for sentencing, the air crackles with political uncertainty. With the Republican presidential nomination already in his grubby paws and a convention coronation looming, the stakes are towering and the outcomes nebulous. Trump leads as a deranged ringmaster, a bloated figure, hair spun like sugar, standing atop of a crumbling soapbox. The wounded political beast bellowing calls for retribution while his minions chant in rapturous union. A spectacle as horrifying as it is mesmerising. A real-life freak show in the heart of American democracy. Then we have outsider independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. chimes in to criticise the Manhattan District Attorney's prosecution of Trump. Profoundly undemocratic, he bleats, claiming it will only bolster Trump's support come November by reinforcing the deranged belief that the judicial system is a political tool. Yet hope remains at this bottom of the Pandora's box of political ghouls. Exit polls from the Republican primaries this winter revealed a critical schism. 16% of his own base balked at Trump if he was convicted of a felony. That's his own base. The cracks are already showing and the dam may finally burst. Even the once gulled rubes are waking to the nightmarish reality. And he does not have the numbers from his base alone, to say nothing of swing voters in marginal races who are probably going to be unwilling to vote for the felon-in-chief. The lurid swine beast may be able to run from prison, but not vote. And here we stand, teetering the edge of the abyss, watching this freak show unfold. This conviction is not merely a judicial milestone, it's a potential cataclysm for the political landscape. Whether it ignites a wildfire of MAGA insurgency or fizzles into oblivion, we can only wait and see. That was this week's Shouting at News. If you've got any constructive feedback, any things you'd like to see, if you want shorter videos, longer videos, more frequent, less frequent, although news tends to get stale by the end of the month, just let me know in the comments. If you're going to start a comments war, if you're just going to spread hate, I will delete you. I genuinely do not care. I'm not going to debate fascists. Now, I'm about to sign off, but I'll once again promise that we might have some historical videos on the channel as well. They'll be called something else. They'll be clearly labelled. If you don't fancy that, don't watch it. If you do, please do. Again, if you'd just rather not see it and you'd rather, say, just start a second channel for that, again, drop me a comment, let me know. But for this week, this is Plague Dr. Jim, signing off.